In the modern world we live today with fast social media, instant gratification, honestly a privileged world that we live in today, it seems like we're lost more than ever as a generation, especially when it comes to relationships. They call this the loneliest generation yet, and it seems like left and right people are trying to look for relationships, commitments. Finding love is harder than ever, even though it should be the easiest than ever compared to any other generation. So what is going on with our world today? How can we find ourselves and transform ourselves from inside out and find our real purpose again? Today we have a special interview with transformation coach Naftali Moses. I'm sure you have seen his viral TikTok videos or reel videos.
The number one killer of all relationships is resentment. Now, most people don't know how resentment is built, but it's very simple. You not speaking up for yourself when you have an opportunity to do so.
He's an avoidant. He's not showing you who he really is. He's not having serious conversations with you. He's showing you who you think he is. Title. You're not looking for boyfriend or girlfriend. You're looking for the standard of behavior that you want from a person in your life.
Casual sex culture, the whole toxic masculine or femininity. What are his opinion on Fresh and Fit podcast? Information just being fed left and right. I have been feeling very lost, so this was a special treat to interview Naftali. No further ado, here's Naftali Moses. That background, I remember your black t-shirt. It's really famous.
Well, yeah, look at me in my tight black tees.
Well, I do have some tough questions. Mostly my audiences are from 18 to 35, and it seems like our generation is really going in an interesting route. So if you can kind of give some insights.
Well, yeah, for people that are 18 or 35, it's not looking good. I think that's clear for everybody. And I think anybody can say that at their own admission. There's of course a whole list of variables that you can say why these things are happening. But if you had to say it in a nutshell, I believe it's just mass godlessness.
Mass godlessness.
The easiest way to put it is if you disconnect people from their values, then they stand for nothing. And if people stand for nothing, then what are they? The worst part is that you get a lot of people subconsciously adopting values, which means that they're not strong. That's how survival works. You go, okay, if I say this and people hang around, then I'll say that, right? If I say this and I get fed, then I'll keep saying it. There's no real relationship between what you say. It's always outcome oriented. So when you can get people consciously adopting their values, what ends up happening is you keep them strong. Now, if there's values, then we imply that there are a hierarchy of value, right? And the tighter relationship that you have with these values, what you call is you create an individual, somebody that consciously made a relationship with who they are, which means that they have a specific purpose. And if there's purpose, there's a higher power. But if you take all of those things away, then what you got is a bunch of people surviving in the name of I'm doing the thing. So you lost out at love. You lose out in an individuation process, which means this is my life. Even the shitty things that happened to me happened for a reason. And they're there to connect me deeper to life. And so that I could become somebody out of it. It's no longer what was taken. It was what was given through that suffering. And you take away all of those things, well, then pretty much you got a bunch of people who don't know where they're going, asking and taking from everybody else. You know, I was just on a call with a client, and it made me realize that actually most people don't come together to build anything. So that's also another thing, how you create loneliness is, well, how do people meet, right? We meet off of core values. Well, you take away the whole notion that there is a higher power and that there aren't values that definitely allow human beings to thrive. You just got everybody aimlessly bouncing around like hockey pucks, everybody touching and bouncing, but nobody ever has a home. They don't even have a place to build or what you call deepen their individuality. And then of course you can just go ahead and point at all the symptoms, but I'm talking about the cause, and I think that's what the cause is.
In terms of the whole modern relationships that's going on, especially in the Western culture, what you speak about and what you stand for, what do you look for in relationship in terms of your own life?
I hold the people in my life to my standard. And a lot of people have a hard time with you saying your standard out loud. I do believe that if you are a man and you have built yourself up to be in a position to contribute and give to a relationship. Unfortunately, a lot of men aren't, is that the purpose is that you build life with a woman. And we do things that are completely different. The male hierarchy is fulfilled through completely different things. And the female hierarchy is completely fulfilled through a whole different set of things. Family, children, being there in relationships to contribute to that, to be loving and nurturing, and to provide in ways that honestly science can't quantify what women can do. I don't think it can, because men experience it when it's not there, and we really experience it when it's there, but you can't record it on camera. You know, it sounds like keep the home clean, raise the kids and be there for me and for the family, right? It sounds like that. And everybody goes, well, what do you mean? Just like around all day? Like I said, you can't record it on camera, but women are completely different creatures and they deserve that kind of respect. That's 50% of the cosmos that's responsible for the evolution of mankind. I believe that women, and especially in my life, should be on the forefront of raising children, having children, and supporting their husband towards his purpose and mission. And she'll get back 10x is an understatement, because you're giving him back 10x and then he's giving you back that 10x and you're giving him back 100 and he's giving you 1,000. And then what happens is you come back to a home that has a division of labor. And by the way, this isn't easy. It's hard. It's really hard. And you're balancing this razor's edge. And that razor's edge is called beauty. And it's when there's perfect harmony between the masculine and feminine. A lot of the time people don't understand how much work that takes. I created something, and this is what I want to build in my life, that you think, well, that's just so simple, isn't it? No, it's not. People get sick. People get injured. Money comes, money goes. Love swings. Children might not be perfectly healthy. They might not also be the easiest to work with. And that it's going to require kindness, which is the ability to stretch from both. And I think that a lot of the time people became too focused on the flexibility and not on what we are. So we've lost individuality and identity within relationships and made relationships impossible. And we've also disconnected males from their masculinity and women from their femininity. We put them on both boats and then sailed them in both opposite directions. What I want for my life is what I would hope that anybody else would want, which is the ability to create a successful life, give them the tools past what you've had. I think people really overcomplicate it. I'm not saying something crazy. I'm saying something that's existed for thousands of years. I think that marriage is the start of somebody's life, not the end of it. Most of Western culture believes it's the end of the world. So you get a lot of fearful women and a lot of pussy-like men who are very great at responsibility. And then that's pretty much what you get. You get this very similar situation. And now that pulls me into another part of the conversation, which is the amount of egomaniacal narcissists on both parties. Because the only way to bring yourself back down from your ego trip is a set of values that can ground you. If you don't have those, well, then it's game over. So then also what you've got is you've given everybody ridiculous expectations and standards that don't even meet human standards and are not what we're here to do. Everybody the ability to compartmentalize their own masculinity and femininity through virtual mediums. And that doesn't create somebody who actually has strength. That would make you confident. It creates egotistical people, which is people who have a notion in their head that's not based off reality, that they can go ahead and treat people A, B, and C because they have an unlimited amount of options. So you pretty much get everybody up in the air. And then what happens when everybody's up in the air is they all mistreat each other, rip each other apart. So the whole purpose is to get people back into their own individuality, to make men feel like men, to make women feel like women, and to have a personal relationship with it to where they don't resent it. Because the last thing we need is a bunch of women wanting to be stuck at home with children, right? That's not the point. We're here not like, oh my God, like we don't want you here. Like I'm always totally game when I speak to a girl and she's like, oh, you're a chauvinist. And I'm like, okay, I'm not for you, honey. I blow her a kiss and I wave goodbye. I'm not here to go, well, no. You have to understand this about yourself. I just walk out. And they're like, what are you doing? You can't walk out on me. And you're like, well, yeah, I can. It's just not what I believe in. So now I could do that because I have a set of beliefs, and that belief in what I believe is right and what I believe in myself and what I'm deserving of.
This is a very popular question that a lot of people had. I've heard a lot of men argue that monogamy for human is unnatural. So is polygamy healthier than monogamy nowadays since cheating is so prevalent?
Yeah, the whole thing about the monogamy doesn't exist. To be honest with you, in a present, if you get somebody to really think about an archetype, there's the divine masculine and divine feminine. There's not the divine masculine and his side hose. And the whole point is that there's clearly a level of character from both parties, the duality coming together as one, right? So the whole monogamy question is very interesting. Now, I'm definitely not pro-promiscuity. For somebody that has been a part of that culture and have seen what it does to people, you know what? Most people don't even know how damn hard it is to integrate your sexual nature. If you're going to be experiencing voyeurism through mistreating others or through pornography and through just a whole list of sexual experiences, without being able to own up to that, you're going to create a very powerful animal that you're going to need to later then integrate. What I've seen a lot of is a lot of these like Madonna whore complexes, where it's women can't fuck the men that can treat them well and that they see as fathers and protectors, but they can fuck the losers. And then what you get for men is a bunch of men that have a hard time engaging openly with the women that they love and want to be the wife of their children. But for the girl they met in the bar, they have no problem running whatever sort of expression they want. So what you get is dead marriages without any excitement and very voyeuristic singlehood with no commitment or outcome. So that's what's happening a lot right now.
Do you personally believe that men weren't meant to be monogamous and polygamy is something that we just all need to accept?
It does not work for women at all. So we already know that for half of the human existence, it doesn't work. There is an evolutionary component where it needs to work. You understand what happens when a majority of men no longer start functioning? And then let's just say that there's this thing called hypergamy, where women date across and up. If there's a limited amount of suitable mates for offspring, then they're going to be pretty much stuck with the last options, which allows women to at least respect it. It's not an ideal. My God, it's not an ideal. And is it human? No, it's not human. It's instinctual. It's animal, which isn't bad. But to use that as a rationalizing method, to not engage and challenge and bring more out from others because you're afraid of getting a specific kind of love, I could promise you this much. I've worked with sex addicts and I've worked with people who just have very juvenile natures. When your spirit is full off of somebody, I don't care how Mr. Machismo you are, or how much higher testosterone levels are, or how masculine you are. You look to the place that challenges you most. And a lot of men have a hard time testing their partner. There's so much that goes into it. Like I said, you have a very promiscuous culture. So going back to the previous point, you have plenty of people that are having a really hard time engaging in deeper, wider relationships. And so once it starts to get deep, what do you get? More emotion, which means that your capacity for rejection increases. So you shut down. And then you look for another way to experience the voyeurism, but still get the emotional connection. So monogamy is not our baseline. Monogamy is our human drive towards connection, towards the biggest ideal possible, towards the most successful family, towards the best love. We know that it's about putting it in and getting out. There are times throughout history, we've seen it before, even you have like the biblical patriarchs and even across the world, nobody's like, I love multiple wives. I like multiple partners. They understood there was a level of responsibility that came to it. You got to be 4 times the man to deal with 4 times the women. And that's okay. Are you going to give them all their marital needs? Are you going to give them the protection that they provide? Are you going to show up and split the tents and then have one every night? I know people think that it's a beautiful process. Like, oh my God, that's great. Multiple women. She let me have other girls. I'd say you failed. As a man, you failed because you haven't challenged yourself. And I think that monogamy is a challenge. I think that there's a level of courage that men are going to have to start expressing to them, which is, I'm not getting the adventure I want. Well, then create it. What about you and her are holding back? Because believe me, being seen completely naked is the most exhilarating thing of all time. And to have somebody else completely naked with you, spiritually fulfilling is an understatement. It just makes so much sense. You fall into a state of flow and you no longer start to go, oh, there's resistance, old habits, or rationalize with evolutionary cases. You go, okay, let's see if we can get deeper into this, because I'm not cheap. And what I put in isn't either. I'm putting in a lot. Let's see what happens if we can confront with one another. Could we get a deeper level of love? Could I find deeper beauty in a woman? And a woman has a capacity for infinite beauty. Infinite beauty. It's what keeps us there. It's not the external stuff. That's a nice little dopamine hit just to get us to the internal beauty, I promise. And I believe that elevated male nature is looking to get the most out of his woman. You know, Adam and Eve as an archetype are 1 and 1. It's not Adam, Eve, and all of his other side hoes. I'm not saying that this isn't an actual reality where there is a shortage of women that understand who they are. Then men are kind of put in a position to where they are challenging. They want to bring it out, but if the women are running away, then what are you left with? You know, then I'm sure that you can do that. For women, it does not work in any case at all. And then the same thing goes with infidelity. I get this a lot. If a woman cheats on a guy, it's game over, because he's allowing himself to be mistreated to that point. And if a guy cheats on a woman, it's different because women value different things from men. A place of sexual sanctity for men is in the bed. The best way to put it is if a guy just had a hooker for one night and he's like, honey, I'm sorry, it could be repaired. I'm not saying it's great. It sucks. It sucks for both parties, but it could be repaired. If she went on a date with another guy, didn't touch him, but had laughs and giggles, that can be repaired. When a man's woman sleeps with another man, it's game over. I'm not saying that these are ideals because they often imply some sort of sheepishness behind what you're asking. And honestly, most people would be shocked. Like, look, dude, you could just tell your partner, I'm not satisfied. Do you want to leave? I'd welcome you to leave. I want to stay here. Okay, knock yourself out. I can't twist your wrist, you know? But most people won't even do that. So they lack courage. And then they go about these, like I could say that these egotistical reinforcing actions because you can get your cake and eat it too, which means that you're a coward who's trying to uphold a mask or an image for other people and for himself because deep down you're insecure. I don't believe in that shit at all.
I like how you mentioned earlier with the whole Madonna whore thing that's going on right now. What do you think is driving so many people to just have casual sex and relationships?
Well, very simple. You get people disconnected from their values, and then when people go to look for their values, they're given institutionalized garbage: the temple, the church, the mosque, the synagogue. And then what do? You go to look for the people that can bring you to those values, and they all suck. Therapists don't help people anymore. Rabbis don't know anything about God. Priests have no concept of Christ or even what he represents. They just kind of echo everybody's stories. People think that there's God in a mosque. Unfortunately, there isn't. He's all around you. It's something that you create. So you have a lot of people looking for answers and a lot of trauma. And by the way, there's one way to heal trauma: sex. It's the easiest way to do it. It's an act of healing. Why? Because it's the most vulnerable place. You are quite literally being penetrated or being received. Like love heals. What do you think? The act of sex is love. And that allows people to evolve forward. And then there's life that comes out of that too, which is pretty damn cool. But I think that more importantly, what's really causing that is that a lot of people have all of these emotions and then they have to cope with it, but they don't have a lot of direction to connect to these values. Remember, the thing about values is they keep you grounded when you're placed with a lot of emotion. You don't go, am I going to take my ex back to fuck somebody else? I have a value, which is don't commit adultery, right? And that there's a whole list of other values that go under that and the severity behind it, right? Well, so what do? You cut it off. You maintain your integrity. But a lot of people dive in and then they rip a little bit of their arm off, and it's not so pretty. The Madonna whore complex is prominent now more than ever because you give people more avenues to execute a lot more narcissism. And it's not healthy. It creates a lot of juvenile men and a lot of ego-driven women. And then that creates a lot of ego-driven men, and then they'll always beat the women. And then those women will have larger egos after they're heartbroken. And then that creates the only coping mechanism they know how, which is how do I keep a guy to stay? We'll sleep with him. He stays a little bit longer typically. So you got a lot of insecure women and a lot of insecure men, both of them disconnected from their values, have no concept of sexual worth or any sort of value behind it. And I understand that the whole point is to take this shit seriously. Don't be cheap. That's the last thing I'd want you to do. I'd want you to be intentional at the bare minimum. Elevate the standard for it. I noticed why it's so prominent for a series of reasons. And it's that sex is such a necessary component in our life. And you have the place that has values that goes, no. Anything below the waist is complicated. We don't talk about that. I'm sure everybody's had an experience with that. And I never understood it. I believe that we exist. When you're hungry, you eat. Yeah. When you're thirsty, you drink. When you're horny, well, you got porn, prostitutions, and promiscuity, right? And then what do you got for women? Well, emotionally shutting yourself down, getting all the connection you need over virtual mediums, because then they can't hurt you over a screen. And to create a relationship with it to where you have no understanding of what its purpose is. I always found that interesting. Whenever I went to Jewish day school growing up, it was like anything below the waist. It was like, oh, we don't ask those questions. And you're like, well, it's like placed in the center of your body, for fuck's sake, right? So don't we have a conversation about this? What does it represent? There's so much complexity behind sex. It is quite literally a compound of all of your emotions simultaneously. It deserves the most understanding and the most communication. But what you get from the places that speak about values is none of those things. It's always the thing that you should like this and like this. They even put rules in it, for fuck's sake. And then you get people prioritizing it like as if marriage is the only way in which you can have it. So you create an unattainable ideal for a bunch of people with the most powerful desire who have no values to even let those two clash. That's a highway to that as an answer.
Tried online dating for the first time and I really didn't like it, but I want to know your opinion on the whole online dating.
Dating apps. Well, if you're a good looking guy and you're above the 20%, you're going to have a great time. You will be in abundance. You can send messages and you will create what you call an unrealistic market in your mind. Because, typically women are very intuitive and on a playing field, you can tell that the good looking guy is not very confident. He's not an interesting pick, is he?
Yeah.
But not to be fooled, they're fooled over virtual mediums, right? Virtual mediums are very two-dimensional. So you have to be understanding that if you're willing to put yourself in a two-dimensional plane, knock yourself out. You're just going to experience the two dimensions. So you're going to be lacking power. What I've noticed is that 20% of the men have 80% of the women. And that 80% of the men are scrounging for 20% of the women. So you get a lot of women being really critical to those men. They pretty much don't exist. They just don't exist. Guys like my friends, even myself, I've never even been on a dating app, never downloaded one. But I've noticed, because I'm not going to put myself in a position to where I'd have to two-dimensionalize myself. And also, it's very easy. What can you do when you go home? You could just swipe, get your date. You no longer challenge yourself to approach others. You no longer put yourself in the face of rejection. So you create fake courage and fake masculinity. I believe that one of the best parts in the whole world is like to engage in that courting process. In the, oh, hey, hello, what's going on? That's already the first date. That absolutely promotes egotistical narcissism for the 20% of men. It creates what you call a bunch of resentful, angry, lonely men on the 80%. So you got a bunch of psychopaths at the bottom and then a bunch of narcissists at the top. And then what do you have for women? Well, they're all swiping on the 20% of men that they want, and they're not getting them. So you pretty much get a similar effect, which is that they're willing to lower their own value to get that higher percentage of men. Remember, this only works in what you call a control group. Dating apps functions as a market. This doesn't work for individuals, for anybody who's too concerned. And then you have the top 20% of women that have not only an inflated ego, an inability to create relationships based off of somebody's actual value. So what you get is a lot of pleasers, predators. Both will hurt you. So the whole point isn't that you can't create a relationship with these things. Absolutely you can. You just better know how to date. If you don't know how to date, which the easiest things to do is just ask serious questions, because ask serious questions, engage in confrontation, and have fun. That's the three things that you need to do. You ask a serious question, I don't care what it is or how intense it is. You'll get to know about somebody. You could ask them, why are you on a dating app? That's the whole thing about dating apps, man. It cracks me up. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? You don't look like Superman. You're not Giga Chad. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean that you're not a man. Women respond to men, period. I know plenty of men who are 6'3", strong, handsome, successful. They can't even express their value to even the most average women because of the insecurities they have at heart. This is not real. Every day that you download another app or you post another picture and you don't use it for work, you're committing yourself to this reality. And it's just a matter of time before this becomes your only avenue for connection. And what happens when you feel that impulse to connect? You pull out your phone. Now, what happens in the marriage? Having a hard time connecting. You pull out the phone. So it's not a long-term solution to anything. The solution is that men and women come together and do what they believe is right at the time, and that we start engaging with one another, because life is what we're here to live. We're not just here to meet our needs. We're here to live. And I believe that that's part of this process. Don't take that away from you, because that's like exciting.
One of the questions that I had, probably you get asked so much, if you were in a room with like Fresh and Fit, whatever podcast, I just wonder how you would you argue with them? Would you talk to them? Like, how would you be?
Oh, they'll say true things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe those things. Belief comes in thoughts, actions, and words, or else it's not a belief. It's a marketing tactic. I know a few things about these guys. I can tell you one thing. They count their body counts.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you that behind that guy that counted the body count is an insecure 16-year-old who had no relationship with women. Now, you can take truth and say it. You can have a smoker say cigarette smoke is bad. But I'm going to tell you something, and I'll call him out. And I have no problem doing it. For high-value men, you seem to hang out with a lot of porn stars, prostitutes, and OnlyFans girls. Are you sure you're not such a degenerate yourself? So the whole point is, if you are a high-value man, then the highest value man that you can be is a father, and a good one. Also comes with husband, and yes, it comes with animal. A lot of men get rid of that part. You got to keep it in the marriage. You keep it exciting. You challenge your partner. You tell him when you're no longer losing, when you're losing that desire to hunt. You guys do it together. And you definitely communicate about it, because then that communication takes courage, which means that you're a brave man. Most people don't even know how to create connections. They don't even know how to be intimate. They don't even know how to be vulnerable. They don't even know how to create a powerful sexual space. They don't even know what a tantric experience is. They've experienced dick and hole, followed by their small little dopamine high, followed by a huge crash and dissatisfaction in their behavior as they constantly externalize all of their insecurities on the women around them, like as if the women around them aren't a perfect reflection of who they are. It's okay. Maybe I don't know everything about them. Maybe they don't date the porn stars, OnlyFans girls, or whatever they are. The whole point is the club girls they don't even deserve the conversation. I find it very interesting that like this is a big topic of conversation, which is these OnlyFans girls get platforms. Why are you giving them platforms? I love how it's a psychological debate for some people. Well, you have to understand that when a woman puts herself naked, it's not widely received by men. It's called being a whore. What do you want to hear? End of conversation. There's no psychological dribble. You don't even get it. And by the way, men are very easily criticized for their bad behavior too. There's just a little slight difference. And this is the one thing that they always really focus on. Men of capacity are very rare. Men of capacity get more women. True. Men of low capacity have involuntary celibacy. All women have capacity right off the bat. So when women are very cheap with it, it often shows them that they have no relationship with their capacity, which is insecurity. And when men are very cheap with it, it means that they're not very selective with the options that they have. They're very cheap with it. So the whole point of having 18 girls is to go, her. Why? How am I going to qualify her? Simple. This is what I do. Be the biggest monkey that you are. Be the most vulnerable that you can be. Be the most autistic, chauvinistic, misogynistic. I don't care how you're perceived, but be you. Because when you have numbers to work with, your partner is the one that goes, I love it when you do this thing. And I know you got options. And I'm not doing this because you got options. I'm doing this because I think that we're right. And now when a lot of men go, well, I'm not a high value guy. Well, you don't need to be one. You need to be somebody who behaves like one. The behavior creates psychological, neurological, spiritual abundance. But it's pretty funny that whole culture, like the red pill culture, I work with a lot of people coming out of it. And it was cool for a minute. You know, it's like a YouTube skit for a guy that just finished watching porn. I promise you. It's like the funnel. They see all the OnlyFans girls. Majority of those men are watching porn, right? So you have the insular culture watching that stuff, not the high value one. So that's their market. So they have a bunch of the porn stars that the guys jerk off to on the show to get them to engage with it, because they themselves are experiencing sexual shame and degrading their own vision of women throughout that process. So now when you have a bunch of men degrading women in a verbal context, they go, wow, I want to be like that guy. But then they go back on the hub, right? Going from the TikTok, funneling down back to the Pornhub page. You know, and I was telling that with my friend, it's like a fucking landing page. But then what that makes them do, it creates more of a distance between men and women. And what happens when there's such a big gap is the fear for rejection becomes so critical. So then you start to commit yourself to those messages, which is to be completely blunt. But that also makes you a pussy. So there's a lot of men who fear rejection, probably on a clinical level. And then majority of the women who just want that 1% of man. And most of those 1% of men don't know anything about value.
Really? Wow.
Just because you fit in a socio-economical standard of high value doesn't mean that you are. And it's very important that people understand what is the highest archetype that a man could achieve in his life is fatherhood. To be a father as an archetype, because under father is protector, provider, husband. And it is animal, capacity, beast, poet, warrior, dancer, musician, and an artist. We're so inspired by one another. The male-female union is the most perfect thing. It's a divine creation. You know, you look at how beautiful they are together. The most beautiful union is a masculine man and a feminine woman. You know, like you can't make this shit up. There's a designer behind this. You look at the beauty that women have. You're like, this shit's insane. Like, you ever just do a little bit of dissonance? Just look at a woman and go like, my God, like everything about you is by definition beautiful. And you look at men and you're like, well, you're like magnificent, right? There's like some sort of majesty to it. But those two things we're such an inspiration to each other. And we give so much to one another in ways that we can't even understand. And I think the most beautiful thing is that we are like separate and then brought together. Something about that implies choice. And I think that when there's choice, there's love. And so when a man and a woman, they choose one another at a very high level with the security that's involved in doing so. And typically people individuate and then individuate further together as one. There's so much inspiration from both parties, so much respect. And the best thing that we have is difference. So much passion comes from difference. And then if we can meet on that common ground of we share our humanity, but you share it from the feminine, I share it from the masculine, then maybe together we can create an evolution of what we are. And if we can just live our life to see that, I think that we did a pretty good job, honey. Can we give it everything that we got? I think that's where the adventure is. The yacht party is boring. The pool parties are boring. The tits and ass become you start to almost develop negative associations to it. It's so thrown around. So when you focus on that, then you attract beauty. And then you become a man of capacity. And then you're no longer part of that shit. How can we create something even more? And could we start life? Could we do it today? Could we challenge ourselves? And could we be even more?
One of the biggest questions that I got was commitment. It seems like women want commitment, men don't. It's so hard to find it, but everyone wants it.
There are too many negative associations to sex. People either treat it hyper casually or so seriously to the point where you need to sign documents. The whole point is it's a natural biological function. I'm not saying be casual with it or put it under a fucking knife. But the whole point is that you at least understand what it is. So for women, they need to understand this, that men value sexual intimacy. Women value commitment and security. But if you're going to weaponize that, because then that means that you've already established that you're weaponizing your sex to gain commitment, which means you're insecure. So you're getting a lot of men having to slither around that wall of defense, because women can weaponize sex and destroy men. So they often do one of two things. They try to protect themselves so much to the point where sex is off the table. And a lot of women do this thing where it's by date 5, well, so you're telling me that if he waits 5 dates and if he puts the mask on and passes, he gets to hit it? And I say this to women all the time. And they're like, no, because then that means he's a psychopath. And I said, exactly. Why are you using time? Time, that's a whole different part of the equation. You should be using information, gathering intel. And here's a really good way to do it. Don't take sex off the table. If what you want as a woman is commitment, put it on the table, but put it at a level that most men can't reach it, which is, I want it to be deep. I want it to be emotional. I want it to be loving. I want it to be present. I want to be in it. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be naked. I want to be an animal. Can you meet me there? Most men are like, oh, well, great. Did you take it off the table? No, but you raised it to a standard. Now, most men with standards typically understand that if we were both going to agree at this very high level of sexual union, what am I going to fucking do that with another chick? Am I crazy? It's that simple. So you have a lot of women with the commitment wall and the sex behind it. And then once the commitment, they get it, then they're like, here's your sex. But what did they also see? That they trapped a man. And they go, why the fuck would I give him sex if I could hold him in my hand like this? And then you have a lot of men also hiding sexual intention, which makes women not trust you, by the way. And even more so, fueling more sexual shame. I know plenty of men who are like, oh, now that we're like in a relationship, and then they'll fuck another girl and then come back to the emotional bonding. And so you have a lot of people compartmentalizing the courage it takes to show up now. You got to show up now. When I'm on a date, sex is on the table, children are, family, the future, and all of me. And by the way, how many times people show up with a fraction of themselves? I know we're already where to meet them. So the best system to get commitment is to just raise the standard for yourself, that at which you would like to be interacted with today, as if an asteroid was going to hit the earth in 24 hours. That's how I live my life. That's how people should live their life. The standard protects you, not your weird rules that you make up for yourself that honestly probably make men dislike you and you dislike yourself, as you always get treated for less. That's typically what happens to women. And for men that create their rules while they're sexually repressed and then later express that outside of her. So
on social media, it seems like manifesting your special person, your desired partner is such like a popular topic. Do you believe you can write it down what you want and manifest it?
To an extent, yeah, you're going to have a much better idea of what you want to speak into reality. You know, I speak to her because the last thing I'd like to do is misrepresent myself. So the tighter you get a relationship with what you are, then you can create the counterpart of that, right? And then manifesting is pretty simple. It's like you are what you attract, right? Not what you want. If you feel insecure and you doubt yourself and you're very juvenile, you're probably going to attract somebody who's insecure, doubts himself, and is very juvenile. I think that your subconscious, people deny that, how much more powerful that is. Your conscious mind is like, some people say 2% of your brain in comparison, right? So you're saying that you got 98% of it attracting people into your life. Yes. That means that you have 2% of it saying, but I want this. No. You don't know that you don't want that. Because with anything good comes a lot of responsibility, and a lot of courage. And so a lot of people like to say that this is what they're attracting, but deep down in their head, they're like, bro, we put all breaks. Continue writing though, it looks cute. Yeah, make him have curly hair. Or write down that she's a brunette. So the whole point is that once you start getting rid of the negative associations towards that, then you could start attracting it. Because you could look at your life, and I challenge anybody to this. The people that are closest to you came in the right time in the right place, so much to the point where you didn't even ask, but they were so necessary. I think that for anybody that has a long-lasting relationship with a friend or even a family member or whatever it is, you start to go, oh my God, I didn't know I needed you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be saying these things, which wouldn't have made this shift, which allowed me to meet this person. How did you come into my life? And you could look back at those thoughts that you had. You could go, oh my God, I manifested them. And then you could ask them, because manifestation is typically a two-way street. I believe that every single role exists with the counterpart, and every thought exists with the other side of that completed idea. So when you go around running your mouth, that's the first step, because then somebody else will complete that sentence. When you do your job as a man, well, then there's a woman for that man, right? When you play your role as a king, well, then it's just a matter of time before you meet your queen. I like this one too. If you're too busy playing the knight, you'll just attract the damsel. So the whole point is that we have every single archetype, and there's two, which means that they all exist within a duality, which means that they all exist simultaneously, but separately. They just choose to come together. And when they do, it's like an easy collision. It's effortless. It's never difficult. The girls that changed your life, or the person that you've met now, maybe your soulmate, or the friends that have made your life not just bearable, but extraordinary. Think about what you were attracting at that time and what you were actually having on a subconscious level, because that was everything. And I can give you it in a story. As a friend of mine, I was about 18. I came out of a relationship. It was a really rough relationship when I was 18. She cheated on me like 3 times. I didn't even know it. I was just my head up my ass. I like to say juice box mindset. It's the best way to describe it. You just think about juice box and girlfriend, movies. Like, of course she's f***ing other guys, because I was fucking everywhere else. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I'm rationalizing that behavior. The behavior is awful, but the whole point is that I just wasn't even there for it. I even remember, it's funny, she called me like a couple months ago, and so it's like, what would you have done if you met me now? I said, well, I wouldn't touch you with a 40-foot pole, but that's just the whole separate point. I go back to the previous one, which is I realized I came out of this relationship. What was I seeking on a subconscious level? Adventure, memories, camaraderie, real love. And I even remember the same day, one of my best friends, who is such a crucial part of my development and everything that I've done at this point in my life, not only indebted to him, but it just blows my mind that it was a two-way relationship, into where it's just an echo chamber of how we don't believe how much we love each other. Came into my life that day saying, do you want to go to the beach? I'm going with some friends. And when we came together, there wasn't this like, no, we're right for each other, pull you in. It was just like, and in the same direction we went. And then years go by, and I ask him, I said, what was on your mind when we first met, when we had this first interaction? Just so you know, he lived around the corner from me the day in my childhood home. So the people that are in your life are not across the seas. They're in your fucking block. Majority of people's wives live within a mile of them. And it's not because, well, that's just how proximity works. It's because there's reason and purpose behind where you are today. Your parents are your parents, not somebody else's. Your life is your life. That is your body. Have a relationship with it. It's hard. People think it's easy just when you're born perfect. It's not the case. You're not. You have to have a relationship with that perfection too, or whatever it is. You're going to have a relationship with your parents. If you don't, well, then you forsake everything in life. One life is not just better than the other. But anyways, yeah, he came into my life, and I asked him, I said, well, what were you looking for? He said, at that point in my life, I was looking for somebody who was confident, bold, and outgoing, who was seeking adventure and wanted to just experience memories and stories that you can write down in a book. Do you see that we both had the same thoughts and intentions when coming together? For years he told me he was insecure and lonely. I didn't believe it, because he did such a good job at just colliding and going with it. So how much does it matter what you were before? It matters the commitments you make to yourself. And when you make those commitments to yourself, well, then there's your partner, there's your friend, there's your client. There's commitments that need to be done to release the subconscious to bring it in. And I made those commitments, which was animals out, motherfucker. And to him, it was the same thing. No longer playing the kid that's complaining about not having the high school experiences. Together, we shared those high school experiences and then into our adulthood experiences, and they seem to keep progressing. And all I could say is thank you, God, for all my blessings at every second, because I'm the luckiest man to be alive and to have those relationships for as long as I can have them. One day I'll be 80, but I'll look at the people around me and I'll know I gave every day to all of these people, and I didn't even need to question if they'd leave, because I knew that I had the day that I had with them, and I gave to that. I did my part. It's about committing to your role. A lot of people don't like to commit to the role. They like to live with, well, if I had my partner, I'd be, what would you be? Well, I'd be more open with the world. Well, then be more open with the world. They go, well, I'm afraid. Well, then that's great. Now you could be courageous. She won't see through courage. Women love brave men. And it's because they know that these men worked hard within themselves. Internalize it. You'll do more than Genghis Khan ever could. And you won't be counting your body count, that's for sure. And you'll have people that represent you, and you'll do things that make you feel alive. And most importantly, you won't ever doubt that this existence is the best thing, because it's a gift from
Wow. So what kind of people should come to you and get your coaching or your help?
Well, I think that a fancy word for it is people that fear rejection. A better word for it are people that at a fundamental level feel weak, unworthy, and undeserving of everything that life has given to them. And this isn't just for people at the bottom of the hierarchy. This is for people at the top. It's for people that want to connect. It's for people that want real love. It's for people that want to build real relationships, for people that want to have legacies, for people that want to be individuals, autonomous, authentic, thinking for them and contributing at the highest capacity possible, really seeing what life has to offer. Those are the people.
This was one of my tough questions. With everything you're saying, you sound like you're like an old soul, but you seem pretty young physically. How do you know all this? I mean, have you been through like a 20-year marriage? Kind of.
Yeah, right. If I've been through a 20-year marriage, I would have got married at 4. There's a few things. Well, one of them is my parents are just exceptional people. They lived to pass on all the good that they had to their children. And I definitely think that being a person of intention is what makes you learn a lot. You know, you can watch a movie. You could turn your brain off and go, lovely movie. Take The Incredibles. Most people just go fun cartoon for kids. Really, it's a story about 2 powerful people coming together and losing themselves because of a society that said you can't be unique, you can't be super. So what you get is Bob's character, who looks like an idiot in that car, looks like an idiot at his work, to find himself unleash those emotions and nearly kill somebody because he's not putting himself in the appropriate positions. So it went from fun cartoon to share with the kids to, oh my God, this is a story about me and my family and my wife. If I don't bring out these parts of me, then my marriage is falling apart. I became very intentional because I did believe that having those set of values, being raised as an Old Testament Jew, is the best way to put it, made me very conscious that my actions had consequences. That belief makes you present. And I believe that when you're present, it's not a question of time that makes you so knowledgeable. Because I know a bunch of 70-year-old airheads, 35-year-old babies. And I noticed that it's when somebody pays attention and that when every time they take an action, there's intention. You're expanding what you can receive from the higher power, and you can inherently increase your wisdom because you're no longer just living life aimlessly. You're living in every conversation as, what does Grace have to tell me? What am I here for her? What is she here for me? And when you go out and watch a film and you go, let me watch this with me in mind. And what ends up happening is that everything starts to happen to you. You're no longer at the right party. You're in the right place. You're with the right people. You're doing the right things. And if you aren't, well, then that's great. You could start doing it. Now you at least have a concept of where you are. Look back up at your North Star, continue going. And I noticed how many people don't even have that intention behind their actions. They expect to fall into things. I didn't really have consciousness till I was about 21. I know that sounds a little crazy. I was in a relationship for about 1.5 years, and it was everything I could have ever wanted on paper at the time.
On paper, wow.
Not what was good for me. It was not what I knew I wanted. It was what I wanted completely. And, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Yeah, I got it. And the best part of it is that I even remember during the breakup, I was given a choice, a decision. For the first time, I heard the clock, everything slowed down. And I believe everybody has this moment in their life. And I remember standing in front of each other and I was left with a choice. I could have just turned a blind eye, but there was a point where I felt completely weightless and I could make a decision. And then once I made that decision, it was like I reassociated for the first time. And that was because I had a compass of what is right and wrong. What is it I'm trying to build? If I was just pleasure seeking, it's a fancy word for survival. And if you pleasure seek too much, that's hedonistic. It's for the pure sake of pleasure. Nobody else. Everything reassociated. I felt all of my pain. I felt all of the love I had. I felt myself come back. And then from that position, it was like, well, I got all these raw materials. Let's go ahead and let's build something for the world. And everything with that same intention. I don't care who you are, how great you are, according to somebody else or in comparison. We all have our messes to clean. And that when we become conscious, we start to see what we need to do, which means that now you have a relationship with the damage. It's no longer, dead weight. It's, wait, you're telling me that I can relate to myself again? I can find love for me and I could create something better than anything I could have ever imagined. And so when I was pulled into those, and I felt the walls get really close on my shoulders, right? It pulls you into a present moment. It's a lot of pressure, but you're generally going to have to make a decision. That was the first decision I made. And then once you're aware that you can make a decision, that's when you really wake up.
I think everyone's rooting for you to have this battle with those people.
I love to make fun of them because they're very easy to make fun of. And it's not like they don't say true things. The truth is the greatest marketing device, man. Yeah. It's the greatest sales pitch. It's the easiest thing to do. But what's hard is to have a relationship with that truth and to embody it. I noticed this and I held myself accountable. If I did not have this job, I'd be making $600K a year as a sales position or some sort of marketing position because I'm very gifted and very talented. But I would not hold myself to the standard that I hold myself to now. There's a reason why I do this, because it is the best security system that I have towards finding and reaching my potential. There's a girl I was seeing, for example, and there's no commitment behind it, whatever it was months ago. And I even told her, I said, there's just nothing here. I don't think that this is going to be a thing that we're building, but if you still want to go ahead and see me, you can. And so I went ahead and I saw another girl and then I came back to her. My natural instinct was but I was like, oh my God, the things that you preach. Thank God I opened my mouth and people hear it. That's the most valuable thing that you have. So what did I tell her? I said, hey, I went out with another girl the other day. Does that bother you? Does that make you see me differently? She was like, no, I never asked anything of you other than just to spend time with you when I could spend time with you. And I was like, oh, well, okay. See, but it demanded a little bit of courage. She didn't kiss some dirty lips. She kissed truthful ones. Because it's not so much about the things that you do that makes them dirty. It's about the shit that comes out of it that does. So I really stand for truth, and I do my best not to lie to myself and to lie to others. I catch myself slipping up like everybody else, and I'm deeply flawed. And I do my best every day. And I believe that other people think that just because you have a position in which you can contribute a lot doesn't mean that you still don't have your own individual struggles. And I would just say, just keep your eye on the prize, Chief.
I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I learned so much from his coaching. He has so much wise words. I will leave all his social media and his links down below if you want to check it out. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys have thought about this episode. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to show support and some love. Let's keep growing our knowledge. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video.